Last night, Sarah walked into her son's bedroom. The walls were bare, the closet empty. The bed that once held a teenager scrolling on his phone was perfectly made, untouched for weeks. She sat on the edge of the mattress and felt it hit her like a wave. The silence in her house was deafening. The purpose that defined her life for 2 decades seemed to vanish overnight. What Sarah was experiencing has a name: empty nest syndrome. And if you're watching this video, you might be feeling it too. But here's what nobody tells you about this transition. It's not just about loss, it's about opportunity. By the end of this video, you'll understand not only why you feel the way you do, but how this next chapter might become the most fulfilling one yet. Empty nest syndrome isn't actually a clinical diagnosis. You won't find it in any medical textbooks or hear a doctor officially diagnose you with it. But that doesn't make it any less real. It's a phenomenon that happens when parents experience feelings of loss and grief when their children leave home. Think about it. For 18 years, your daily routine revolved around raising another human being. School lunches, soccer practice, homework help, late night talks. Your identity became wrapped up in being someone's mom or dad. Then suddenly, they're gone. The role that defined you shifts dramatically overnight. What happens in your brain during this transition is fascinating. Your brain literally created neural pathways dedicated to parenting activities. And when those activities stop, your brain notices something is missing. That's why you might find yourself setting an extra plate at dinner or listening for footsteps in the hallway, even though you know your child isn't coming home. The most common symptoms include feeling a loss of purpose. For years, your main job was raising kids. Without that job, who are you now? An empty feeling when you walk past their bedroom or notice the quiet in the house. Worry about your child's safety and decisions now that you can't monitor them daily. Relationship changes with your partner. Some couples discover they've grown apart while others rediscover each other. Sleep disruptions. Your brain was programmed to stay partially alert for your children, even when they were teenagers. But here's what's important to understand. Empty nest syndrome affects different people in different ways. If you were a stay-at-home parent whose entire schedule revolved around your kids, the transition might hit harder than someone with a demanding career outside the home. Single parents often feel it more intensely than couples who have each other to lean on. Research shows that mothers traditionally experience more empty nest symptoms than fathers, but that gap is narrowing as modern fathers take more active roles in child rearing. The emotions aren't about gender, they're about attachment and daily involvement. What might surprise you is that your children may be experiencing their own version of this transition. They might not admit it, but many young adults feel a mix of excitement about their independence and unexpected homesickness. They're missing you too, even while they're exploring their new freedom. Now, let's talk about the factors that make empty nest syndrome more intense for some people. First, if your parenting became your primary identity, you're more vulnerable. Parents who maintain separate interests, careers, and social connections throughout their parenting years typically adjust more easily. Second, if your child's departure coincides with other major life changes, like retirement, menopause, caring for aging parents, or health issues, the emotional impact multiplies. Third, parents of only children or the youngest child often feel it most acutely because the transition represents the end of an entire life phase. But here's where things get interesting. Research from the University of California found something unexpected about the empty nest years. While the initial transition is difficult, many parents, especially mothers, report higher marital satisfaction and improved mental health after their children leave home. This contradicts the popular belief that empty nest syndrome only brings sadness. The reality is much more nuanced. Yes, there's grief, but there's also possibility. What we're really talking about is a fundamental identity shift. For 2 decades, you were someone's caretaker, advocate, and guide. Now you're being called to rediscover who you are beyond those roles. This transition follows a pattern similar to other major life changes. First comes shock, the realization that your daily routine has fundamentally changed, then sadness and nostalgia for the years that have passed. But eventually, if you navigate it intentionally, acceptance and reinvention emerge. The most successful empty nesters approach this phase with curiosity rather than a fear. They ask themselves questions like, what interests did I set aside when I became a parent? What new skills might I develop now? How might my relationship with my partner evolve? Here's what many don't realize. Your relationship with your adult children doesn't end. It transforms. You're moving from a hierarchical relationship to something more resembling adult friendship. This new dynamic can be surprisingly rewarding. Parents who navigate this transition successfully often follow certain patterns. They communicate openly with their children about the changes without burdening them with guilt or excessive neediness. They also reconnect with their partners, rediscovering shared interest beyond parenting. They explore dormant passions or develop entirely new ones. They redefine their parenting role, being available for advice when asked, but respecting their children's independence. They build new routines that give their days structure and purpose. Let me share a quick story about Mike and Linda, who found themselves rattling around their suddenly quiet house when their twin daughters left for college. The silence between them grew uncomfortable. Without kids to discuss, they realized how much of their conversation had revolved around parenting. Rather than drifting apart, they decided to take a cooking class together, something neither had time for when juggling their daughters' busy schedules. That small step led to weekly experimental dinner nights where they tried recipes from countries that they hoped to visit someday. 6 months later, they were planning their first international trip in 20 years. Their empty nest had become a launching pad for a new chapter together. What's important to understand is that feeling grief about your children leaving doesn't mean you failed as a parent. Quite the opposite. It means you created such a meaningful family bond that its change is deeply felt. Successful parenting is supposed to lead to independent children who leave home. Your emotions are a testament to the depth of that bond. It's something I would frequently remind myself of when missing my own daughters. Technology has changed how we experience empty nesting. Previous generations had weekly phone calls to stay connected. You have texting, video calls, and social media. This can be both helpful and challenging. Constant connection may ease the transition, but it can also delay fully adapting to your new reality if you're digitally checking in on your child multiple times daily. Though it can be difficult, now's the time to start pulling back a bit. The healthiest approach is finding balance, maintaining connection without monitoring, being available without hovering. What many parents don't realize is that empty nest syndrome can manifest physically as well as emotionally. Some report changes in appetite, disrupted sleep patterns, or even physical symptoms like headaches or fatigue. This isn't just in your head. It's your body processing a significant life change. Dr. Helen Fowler, a psychologist specializing in life transitions, explains it this way. The stress hormones released during major life changes can affect everything from your immune system to your digestive health. This is why self-care becomes especially important during the empty nest transition. The good news? Research shows that these physical symptoms typically subside as you adapt to your new normal. Parents who actively engage in the transition rather than resisting it tend to bounce back more quickly. What about the impact on mental health? While most parents experience temporary sadness, approximately 10% develop more serious symptoms of depression or anxiety that may require professional support. Risk factors include having a history of depression or anxiety, experiencing multiple major life changes simultaneously, lacking a support network of friends or family, and having had an especially close or complicated relationship with the child who left. If you find yourself unable to function in daily life, experiencing persistent sadness, or having thoughts about harming yourself, please reach out to a mental health professional. There are signs that what you're experiencing goes beyond typical empty nest syndrome. Let's also talk about what psychologists call identity foreclosure, when you've been so focused on your role as a parent that you've neglected to develop other aspects of your identity. This can make the empty nest transition particularly challenging. The antidote? Gradual identity expansion. Roberta Campbell, a 56-year-old former PTA president, described her experience. I realized I'd spent so long being Jason and Emma's mom that I'd forgotten who Roberta was. I started small, volunteering at the animal shelter once a week. That led to training as a wildlife rehabilitator. Now I have this whole part of my life that has nothing to do with being someone's mother, and it's incredibly freeing. This gradual exploration of new identities is crucial. You don't need to reinvent yourself overnight. Small, consistent steps toward new interests often lead to the most sustainable changes. Something else to consider is how cultural expectations shape our experience of the empty nest. In societies where multiple generations typically live together, or where parents expect adult children to move back home after college, the empty nest transition may be less pronounced or happen in stages rather than all at once. Even within families, expectations vary widely. Some parents count down the days until they can convert their child's bedroom to a home gym, while others dread the moment that their child walks out the door. Neither reaction is wrong. They simply reflect different parenting styles and life goals. I want to tell you about something I discovered while researching this topic. It turns out that many cultures don't even have a concept equivalent to empty nest syndrome. In fact, in some societies, a child's departure from home is seen exclusively as a success milestone for parents, a time of honor and achievement, not loss. This perspective shift changes everything. What if your current feelings aren't the whole story? What if this transition, while undeniably emotional, is actually the doorway to your next evolution? In upcoming videos, I'll reveal the specific strategies empty nesters use to not just survive this transition, but to actually thrive in ways they never expected. More specifically, I want to challenge everything we typically believe about this life stage. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not always roses, so we're also going to look at the challenges parents face. So whether you're happily married or a single parent, know that I'll be working to find solutions for what ails us. Until then, remember this: the nest may be empty, but your life doesn't have to be.